The Summer Games Minute, brought to you by Mass Mutual. For most professional athletes, versatility means they can play a few different positions in a single sport. For Babe Dietrichson-Zaharias, versatility means dominance across the entire spectrum of sport. In the 1932 Summer Games in Los Angeles, Zaharias won gold in the 80-meter hurdles and the javelin throw, plus she got a silver in the high jump. Running, throwing, jumping wasn't enough for Babe, so she became a competitive billiards player, then jumped into professional golf, winning 10 major championships, all the while making a few pitching appearances in Major League Baseball spring training games. Mass Mutual understands the nuances in how women want and need to manage their finances. With quality product solutions and guidance, a Mass Mutual financial professional can help you plan for both short-term and long-term money goals. Learn more and get started at massmutual.com.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
The Athletic.
Just a week after Ducati announced its super team factory lineup for 2025, KTM's had a go at putting together its own super team as well. It signed Enea Bastianini and Maverick Vinales for Tech3 Gas Gas for next season to join Pedro Acosta and Brad Binder in its roster, giving it a much stronger, more experienced overall package than it's had at any point so far in its time in MotoGP. It came a little bit out of the blue. Well, 50% of it did anyway. The Vinales side was not a complete shock, but the timing and speed was a little bit, whereas Bastianini had been linked for a little while. So this is take 5 or 6 of the Race MotoGP podcast this week. We've had a few logistical reasons why me, Matt Beer, Simon Patterson and Val Khorounzhiy couldn't quite get together at the start of the week. We recorded the full episode on Wednesday. We're pretty pleased with it. And then it's due to go out Thursday morning and along comes KTM. So we're trying again. Producer Johnny, bless him, has got a sort of... I've basically emptied a bin onto his desk with a lot of post-it notes on bits of audio going, can you keep this bit, change this bit? Because we mentioned Vinales a lot in the original recording, but some of it survives. So this is the cut and shut episode of the Race MotoGP podcast. We're going to go straight to the bigger bombshell element of the KTM announcement, and that is that Vinales has left Aprilia, a team that was very, very keen to keep him alongside Jorge Martin, even though it forgot to tell him that Martin was coming in the moment. Simon, what is your quick summary of why Vinales has left a team that he's just got really good with?
I think he rage quit. I think he basically quit for the same reason that Jorge Martin signed for Aprilia. I think that he has made a snap decision, essentially, that he doesn't want to, I guess, continue to be number 2, which is how he sees it. Even though team boss Massimo Rivola made a lot of comments about how he would become the new captain of the team to replace Aleix. How he wanted wanted Maverick to stay with them, that was their first choice, but he also conceded that they accidentally announced that Jorge Martin was joining the team without telling Maverick, and I think that all of this is a bit of a consequence of Maverick being slightly petulant, slightly mad, in an angry sense. And making a decision that, I mean, there had to be some conversation beforehand, because not every MotoGP contract signed in 24 hours, like Jorge Martin's was. So there had to be some previous conversation. But I think yeah, I think he's made something of a snap decision to walk away.
Some of the Spanish reporting, and now it's borne out because people were linking Maverick to a KTM move for a little bit now, ever since the Martin thing came out. And some of the conversation around it actually suggested that he may have even been leaning that way already before the Martin thing and before he was told about it, well, through the media, because obviously he was not personally informed it. And if you hear him like strenuously deny each and every time that there's an Aprilia deal on the table, it sounds like maybe the part that got to him is just how long it took for Aprilia to be ready to commit him, which may be tied into the fact that everybody was waiting to see what Aleix Espargaro will do for next year. And I think Aprilia was always going to head into this silly season thinking, well, we try to keep one guy, and that guy might be Aleix, it might be Maverick, and then the other guy, we go for somebody big, whoever loses out at Ducati, basically. I also do, because it is Maverick Vinales, I do suspect it is an emotional decision. We'll get into how we feel about the merits of that decision, I think, a little bit later. But I think we'll only get a particularly good idea for why it happened the way it did, and whether Aprilia did enough to keep him, did enough to assure him of his place in the team, and how big of a factor Jorge Martin's looming presence is. I think we'll find out only when Maverick speaks and when Massimo Rivola speaks again, now that they know they're going their separate ways.
Well, the thing there, though, is, yes, Jorge Martin is a looming presence. When Massimo Rivola says Maverick can still be the captain, that's a definition of captain that basically means person who's been here longest.
Yes.
Because you don't do what they did to sign Martin. You don't look at Martin's record right now and that championship lead and think he's coming in to be number 2 or
of course
even equal number 1. You're signing him to win a title for you. So that's fine. You see the logic of going, okay, my team's about to become this guy's team. Maybe I'll look elsewhere. But then you go to KTM, it's got Pedro Acosta, the new god of MotoGP, Brad Binder, who's been there forever and is on a contract for forever, and they've signed Bastianini as well, who is also a top rider. Is Vinales just dooming himself to be 4th out of 4 in a lineup rather than 2nd out of 2?
Yes, 100%.
I don't see how you can say that. How could you possibly say that in a season in which we've seen the Circuit of the Americas, and in which Acosta has stomped all over Brad Binder, and Enea Bastianini has been 3rd out of 4 of the GP24s?
Because for every weekend where we've seen the Circuit of the Americas, we've seen a Jerez where he's just absent. Was it Jerez?
Sure.
Where he's just
Barcelona.
absent. Barcelona, where he's just nowhere. Yeah. And other Aprilias are, there are races this year where he has been the 4th Aprilia out of 4. Because this is Maverick and he's captain in consistency. And that's why I say it. Because at the end of the day, Brad Binder might be struggling this year, but his reputation is consistency. I think that Enea Bastianini is a really good racer in particular, latter half of the races. It's worked really well for Binder. I think it's going to work really well for him on this bike. And Pedro Acosta is Pedro Acosta. So I see Vinales. Oh, and also it's Vinales who took 2 years, 18 months to learn the Aprilia. I think his first season's going to be a complete write-off because he's just going to spend the year struggling to adapt to the bike, struggling to adapt to the new crew, complaining that he doesn't have his crew chief, as he did when he went to Aprilia, until he got all those things and eventually it clicked. So I think we're going to see him very much the 4th of these 4 bikes.
Yeah, I don't see that. I don't think we're even close to be. It is a possible outcome. I think it is about as possible as him being 2nd best and 1st on some weekends. And, that is the Maverick Vinales promising that he can be anything. The circumstances of the switch are very different too, because I think if we're suspecting a difficult adaptation, then we also have to suspect that for Enea Bastianini, who's never ridden a different MotoGP bike at all. Maybe he goes to the KTM RC16, he just cannot do it. The RC16 right now is, I think, not quite the nightmare it was in terms of, some riders just never clicking with it. But it is also, now that they've switched to the carbon chassis and the way it works, the new rear tire, it is clear that, some riders are struggling. Augusto Fernandez is riding like he's found an entirely different bike this season, and a bike that he can't do anything about. it is entirely possible he is fourth of four. I think to treat that as a foregone conclusion is, I think that's impossible. Because also, the Aprilia adaptation, we all know that was a very different bike for him. It was his first time on a V4. It's a very particular V4, but it is a V4. It was an Aprilia that nobody before Maverick Vinales, apart from basically project rider architect Aleix Espargaro, could make to work at all. I mean, name me a single rider next to Aleix Espargaro who did anything with that bike before Maverick.
Well, there just aren't any, are there? We know this, but
are they bad riders?
No,
Sam Lowe, Scott Redding, Andrea Iannone.
They're not top riders, but I take the point. They are better riders than they looked for a lot of the time on that bike.
Well, that has to be my argument. I think the Aprilia is less friendly to incoming riders than maybe it should feel. And I think the KTM now might be more friendly to incoming riders than we might fear, which is not to say, like, you never know until he gets on it in Valencia. And then maybe he's like a second off, and because of Maverick's particular disposition, it just turns into Johan Zarco again. Could be. I could not possibly rule it out.
Yeah. That is partly one of my concerns. I think the KTM is probably quite a difficult bike to get on with. I think it's not maybe not difficult, but it's unique.
Yeah.
It's gone in a unique aero direction. It's gone in a unique frame direction. It was always a unique frame direction. And then they started making the weird frame out of carbon fiber just to be even weirder. It's got an engine that is super, super fast and quite aggressive. And I think there's lots of things there that aren't going to gel well with Maverick. And I foresee not an Aprilia long adaptation process, but quite a long adaptation process. Whereas I think Bastianini in particular will have a bit of a shorter one, because I think the bike will play to his strengths to an extent. I think, he's real good on brakes, which is where that bike seems to work quite well. And so I think it's going to suit him. I think his process will be easier and Maverick's will be harder.
No, I believe that. I think that is accurate. It's just, it's all about the timeline, and it's all about I also do still think that in terms of the talent level, if you were to rank those four guys, obviously, Pedro Acosta is going to be number one, I think. But I think number two is going to be Maverick Vinales. And we'll have to see whether there's any clear path to him to... when he spoke about his next MotoGP move, he said the priority is to find a place that helps him maximize his talent. The fact that he's left Aprilia now, even though there was a path to continuing, suggests to me that for some reason he's thought there's a ceiling he's encountered there, just like he maybe had at Yamaha. And he's just nomadically trying to, swapping around between different bikes, trying to find one that helps him find that promise that, I guess, he always will hear the media speak every single day that, you're just a head case who can't deliver consistently on any machine. And one way to do that is to work on yourself, but I'm sure he has. I mean, you can't be this good without working a lot. Even this inconsistently good, you cannot do it without, when being completely wrong in your approach. But I think what he is doing, and I understand it in a way, is just trying everything he can, every bike he can, and seeing maybe this is the one, maybe this is my pot of gold, maybe this is what would have happened if he never left Suzuki, even though I think if he never left Suzuki, he still would have left Suzuki, and this whole entire thing would have happened the same way. So for me, the question of this move is, Matt, you brought up Acosta and going into Acosta's house. But it's a matter of what is Maverick Vinales' end goal in this. And if it's winning the championship, then he's in trouble here. He's going to satellite ride with a brand that hasn't won any titles. But he was also going to be in trouble in Aprilia in those terms. And I'm not sure that the odds of him winning a championship here and there are that dramatically different. I wonder if the move is just like, what gets me closer to feeling good about my career?
Possibly, but Eve, because of the team he's going to, because of its history with riders, because of everyone else he's up against, it's a very strange move for someone who might be doing it to want a comfortable environment where they could consistently thrive.
Here's another factor. And I think this is also just helps everybody at KTM. When we speak about Ducati, the bike's obviously amazing, right? But what is the advantage that so many of the riders from other manufacturers always speak about in very envious tones? it's having a ton of data from good riders on similar equipment. Like, that's always the thing. KTM is building, I think, a Death Star of good data here.
Yeah,
with its 4 riders on the same bikes.
This is the bit like when this happened, when it was announced. My first thought was actually that before I started thinking about the particular peculiarities of Vinales' career and going, "Oh my gosh, is this going to work? Why is he doing this?" But okay, ignore the dips, take the peaks. Vinales at his peak is extraordinarily good and capable of things not many people on the grid can actually do. He just doesn't do it often enough. Bastianini has been a title contender on a year-old bike and is proving to be very effective backup for Pecco Bagnaia in the factory Ducati team this season. Binder has done amazing things at KTM. This season is not great, but last season was very good. Even though he didn't get over the line for a Grand Prix win, look at his championship position. Look where the next best non-Ducati is after him, miles behind. Pedro Acosta is clearly sensational. This is a hell of a lineup. These 4 together, yes, you can make skeptical cases around elements of 3 of them, but this is huge. And also, in experience terms, Tech3, even now, even with the rest of the season still to go, Tech3's 2 riders next year have 15 Grand Prix wins between them already. The only past Grand Prix winner that Tech3 signed at KTM before is Petrucci, who had 2 wins, 2 slightly random wins, and that was a bit of a failure. So this is a complete change of the game for how KTM is using Tech3, for how KTM's approaching its whole thing. And it comes at a time when it, in some ways, could look at it and go, we don't need a bunch of strong riders. We've got a guy who might be the best rider on the grid within a couple of years. But instead, it's just brought in this armada of amazing extra data for him, extra fallback options. It's phenomenal. It's a very impressive chess move by KTM, I'd say. The other question that came to mind straight away, though, I've said on this podcast before that if I was KTM, my move for this year would be stack Tech3 with slightly trustworthy talent, so you've got a fallback in case the answer to the Brad Binder question right now is he wasn't as good as we thought he was. Because Binder has been so impressive for so many years, it seemed, and then Acosta's come in, and now you're thinking, oh, could someone actually have been doing better than Brad Binder on that KTM for the last 4 years as well? So what do you guys feel this means for Binder's position in KTM, Val? I
actually realized just now that I don't think I agree with your theory on Binder. I don't think, I think it will be pressure on him, but I don't think that's a major motivator. And here's why. So this season of Binder's has been pretty bad, right? We all agree, just has not really started off for him reasonably well. It has cast basically major questions and almost completely written off the idea of him being KTM's flagship rider for a championship in the future. I mean, we ran a poll on the Race Moto social media as to which of the 4 KTM riders will finish top next year. Pedro Acosta won that poll with 87% of the vote. There is no belief in the circles of MotoGP viewers that anybody else is heading up that program. And with all of that, Pedro Acosta has 101 points, 101. Brad Binder has 85.
Yeah.
As a second rider, he's there.
Fine. Yeah.
He's basically there. You do not, if you have a first rider and then backup sort of structure at your works team, you're fine. You will do a hell of a lot worse than Brad Binder. I mean, I think it would be insurance only if he craters further for me. I don't think there's like a real urgency to replace him, but there is an urgency, and I do agree with that to really truly properly understand what the real level of the KTM RC16 is.
Yeah, I think that's more my Binder point. Like you thought he was that, and now you're really not sure. And I know he's always had iffy qualifying and turned it into race results, and still always been up there in the championship, but that's got a few percent more iffy this year alongside Acosta. There's just it's not that I think necessarily they needed to know they've got Binder replacements and alternatives. It's just ways of answering what's become a question mark because Binder has this year. This is confirmation that Jack Miller and Augusto Fernandez are out of the KTM lineup, which is not a huge surprise. Simon, where are these two just out of MotoGP now in your expectation?
Yeah. I don't know where Augusto Fernandez is going to land. I would imagine he might look at a route back to Moto2. I mean, there's Moto2 teams who you can imagine would be very interested in him. I would love to see Augusto Fernandez on for example, Mark VDS speed up, machine next year, like the rumor is. That for me would be super interesting. But I think I can't see a path for Jack Miller to retain his seat in Grand Prix racing, full stop. I've heard some rumors linking him to World Superbikes, potentially linking him to Alvaro Bautista's factory seat should Bautista retire. And I think Jack, with a young family now, with 10 years of MotoGP, I can see that being a pretty good fit for him, to be honest.
Yeah, I guess you know how I feel about Moto2 relative to how most people feel about Moto2 is the intermediate, place of Grand Prix racing. I'm not super enamored with the idea of riders coming back to Moto2 after MotoGP. But, I think, honestly, I do think Augusto Fernandez, having already won that championship too, I think he deserves better than that from his career. And I think it would be really cool if there was some path into like becoming a permanent World Superbike fixture for him. But let me just put it that way. I hope he's been working on that all season with his representation, because he should have known from test one that this was probably going to be the outcome. So I really hope so.
You'd imagine he has, given his openness about his struggles and how realistic he's. This guy's not been protesting that Acosta's got better equipment or that anyone's screwing him over. He's been very frank about his situation. Yeah. He's a smart guy. So, yeah, hopefully he's been making a lot of phone calls for a while now. What's your take on where Miller should go, Val?
Well, where he should go is where somebody will take him, obviously, and I think he'll accept also that as the correct answer.
Yeah.
So it depends on how important it is to hang on in MotoGP, because that's really difficult to let go of. I do think it is possible for him to hang on, but really the only route that makes any sense to me in terms of, being both fulfilling in some way, rewarding to him financially, offering him some stability that maybe wouldn't be there otherwise, is Honda. Ugh. And I don't know how good of a fit he would be with that whole structure and, Alberto Puig and all of the stuff that's going on around it. But the thing is, Honda needs somebody to ride the Honda, right?
Yeah, I think I'm probably the most Jack Miller sympathetic part of this podcast lineup.
I don't think so. I think that is me. I think it's me this whole time.
I think I'd fight you for that. I would not be. For all that Jack Miller disappears in races, makes mistakes and stuff, I think he adapted to KTM really quickly. He looked great there. I think his Ducati achievements were very respectable. He was extremely pragmatic and professional in how he settled in alongside Bagnaia when it was clear Bagnaia was going to be a title winner there. He's done some really good things in MotoGP. It turns out he's not champion caliber. I think he probably deserves, on merit, another chance in a longer MotoGP career, but I'd be an awful lot happier for him personally if he went to factory Ducati World Superbike team and started fighting for titles, having a great time there with a nice civilized 12 event calendar, than if he went to a Honda and was
I don't think Honda needs someone to ride their bike. I think Honda needs someone to develop their bike, and I don't think that's Jack Miller.
Well, why not?
Because he's traditionally not had a great reputation for it. I mean, there's never really been a case of Jack turning up to a team and making the bike better, has there?
Well, I guess you could argue.
He's certainly not made the KTM better.
Well, he's not made KTM better for himself, but you could argue that, he is part of a, the Ducati experience he carries is important. I think he did oversee, in his time at Ducati, he did help oversee a certain improvement. I mean, it's just a question of whether he was there along for the ride or played a part in it, but we can't really know that without being inside there. They
did trust him with the Pramac bike, didn't they, at a time when that Pramac bike was the one that got the good parts to test for the factory team. We don't know what the contribution was, but he was in that role there.
They trusted him to develop the ride-out device because they knew that at least he'd start the races. Honda needs someone that's going to finish races, and I think Jack in a Honda would see more gravel traps than Joan Mir in a Honda.
Are there that many gravel traps on the calendar?
I don't think there's enough gravel traps.
Mir never crashed a lot until he got to Honda.
No.
He had a pretty bad crashy final Suzuki season, but I agree that was probably...
Whereas Miller has always crashed a lot, and I think Miller in a Honda would be, like Miller's first season in a Honda.
But here's the thing.
He crashed a lot.
It's a question of fit, but we have to play it against other opportunities. I mean, Maverick Vinales has just been on the market, and he's told everybody, no uncertain terms, no, not going there, not interested. Bike's not good enough, not going to help me do anything. Joan Mir sounds every single day like he's about to quit. So it's a question of who can you get? And for me, it's just, if Mir does leave, it's Miller or it's Miguel Oliveira, who could be quite good. But I don't...
Or Di Antonio or Raul Fernandez or Morbidelli.
No, I would not. No, I would go Oliveira or Miller over all of those for the thing that Honda needs right now, honestly.
All those guys appear a little bit later in this episode as well, where we're sussing out all the questions we haven't yet tackled in this mad fortnight for the rider market. One thing that now has become a question, which seemed like it might not be, who does Aprilia sign alongside Jorge Martin now Vinales is out of the picture? I'd like to know who you think would go there, but also who you would pick if you had the choice. They might be the same person. Simon, you can start.
I don't know.
Well, this is your longest thinking pause ever, I think.
Val, jump ahead. Go. Let me think about it.
Okay, yeah, but I thought we were aligned on this. I feel a tinge of betrayal. I mean, we were expecting, I think, Marco Bezzecchi to be their presumptive number one pick.
In an alternative reality where we might have recorded this podcast 2 days ago, Simon was adamant Vinales should and would stay at Aprilia. So I think this is where we are a little bit.
I'm starting to see an argument for Di Antonio.
Okay, yeah.
That's where it's coming from. That's where the thinking is coming from.
I mean, on the merits of this here, and again, for me, like, I think it's Bezzecchi because of, and we've used this exact phrase before in a previous episode that will not see the light of day, but, you bet the upside with Bezzecchi. You bet that whatever is happening this year is fundamental only to this current Ducati that he has, rather than, say, the change in rear tires or whatever.
Yeah.
And that when he comes to Aprilia, all of those understeer issues are just gone. And you have a rider who, I think Aprilia hasn't really had this meaningfully. You have a rider who also, when the conditions are a bit off, you can really rely on, because that's, you have low grip, you have something weird, that you can rely on Marco Bezzecchi to be right up there right away, which I think he could be an easy fit to Aprilia, but it is just a question of whether you're certain that whatever ails him right now is not a long-term issue. Because if it is a long-term issue, then yes, you might as well go Fabio Di Gianantonio. For me, I think they will pick Bezzecchi. What I would do if I was Aprilia is, I'm a little surprised Yamaha hasn't re-signed Alex Rins yet. What I would do is I would place a call there.
Ooh.
And see what's up, what's going on, where's the contract. And if there's any sort of friction there, or any sort of, feeling slighted or anything like that, I would try to get that one away from Aprilia. You'd get a rider who I'm not fully sure is fully recovered from his leg break yet, and I don't know that he ever will be, because, real bad injury.
Yeah.
That was a bad one, wasn't
but
it? Yeah.
A rider who's very clearly, cerebral, a rider who we credit, I think, with a lot of good bike development work, and a rider who, if he does come fully right, is some marvelous asset, isn't it? And I know if everybody says Aprilia must have an Italian, they're desperate to have an Italian. Every time I've heard, primarily Massimo Rivola speak, he's never made it sound like there must be an Italian. I think that's a bit of a media invention. I think he's always asked about, so you would like an Italian? And he'd be like, yeah, that could be okay. That could be good. That could be good for the brand. It doesn't feel like it's ever something that they've proffered by themselves.
I am going to just throw something into the mix here and quote the world's worst secret keeper on social media just before we recorded this. Someone, a fan, was speculating on Twitter that maybe this would be enough to, the announcement that everyone is leaving Aprilia might be enough to convince Aleix to stay. And Aleix quoted their tweet with just all it has is the kind of the keeping my mouth shut emoji and an Italian flag emoji.
Yeah.
So consider this is the guy who basically, in context, told us that they'd signed Jorge Martin on social media before they signed him. You have to kind of think he knows something about what's going on.
Yeah.
And he's being terrible at keeping secrets again.
But what is the Italian flag in this case? Is
Aprilia, surely.
or an Italian rider for Aprilia, or just
It's
a
an
show
Italian
of
rider
support
for Aprilia.
for the Italian national team at the Euros. Clearly very passionate there. No.
Have you not watched Alicia's social media?
Yeah.
He is not cheering for Italy.
I know.
You know we love talking stats here at The Athletic. Here's one that's super simple to remember. Discover automatically doubles the cash back you've earned on your credit card at the end of your first year with Cashback Match. That means with Discover, you could turn $150 cash back to $300. That's right. You could put it towards some memorabilia you've had your eye on or treat yourself to a premium sports network. You earn and Discover doubles. See terms at discover.com/credit card.
We'll get back to the pod in a moment, but first of all, let me tell you about Grammarly. Email, Google Docs, Slack, you write across multiple platforms and places during your workday, so delivering consistent, high-quality communication everywhere is key. Grammarly is an AI writing partner that helps you get work done faster with high-quality writing for better projects, proposals, presentations, and more. Best of all, Grammarly works where you work, so you can get more done no matter what tools you use. As a journalist and podcast host, I'm constantly writing and rewriting copy and drawing up scripts. It's part of the job, and Grammarly helps make it faster. It's got some really cool features like tone suggestions to help you strike the right balance between direct and friendly in work emails. Plus, Grammarly has a ton of other great features like advanced spelling, grammar, punctuation, and conciseness suggestions to ensure your writing is professional, mistake-free, and clear. Get AI writing support that works where you work. Sign up and download for free at grammarly.com/podcast. That's grammarly.com/podcast. Easier said, done.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Pramac/Pramac Ducati /Pramac Yamaha. What is going on there? Because when I did question a few of our colleagues, like, what are we missing? What haven't we talked about in the rider market amid all the big headliners? And one thing that kept coming up from people who follow MotoGP a bit more peripherally was, where's Ducati going to fit everyone if it hasn't got Pramac? So what is the current betting on what Pramac is going to do? And if it goes, what on earth happens next? Val pulled a strange face, Simon made a strange noise.
I still think it's likely
to go.
Noises from within the Yamaha camp that a few people have whispered to me. People who have said things in interviews and then immediately backtracked on them, both from the Pramac side and the Yamaha side. People keep saying things like, when we have a satellite team, if we have a satellite team, and the fact that I was told months ago by a normally reliable source that it was all signed and done, make me as confident as ever. Plus, people keep asking, why would you do it if you were Pramac? Well, it's pretty straightforward, isn't it? Because right now they're a team fighting for a championship and winning races every weekend. And next year, they're not going to be a team fighting for championships and winning races every weekend because they've got no riders who are going to be capable of doing that, because they've lost Jorge Martin. In that situation, is it not better to get what is essentially a massive paycheck from Dorna and from Yamaha to use machines that will get better, that are already getting better, and take on a new challenge and become part of the Yamaha? I know, Val, I know, but they are slowly getting better. Look, the bar was very, very low, and now it's slightly higher. I didn't say that they're fixed. I said they're getting better.
No, I know.
But, what we've heard about the rumored Yamaha deal is that Yamaha have offered them free MotoGP bikes, which,
wow,
given that Dorna pays every team, I think 2.1 million euros per bike per season as the money that it cost you to lease the bikes from your manufacturer, and that they've offered Pramac supposedly a 3-year deal. That's what, 12 million euros? That's a good deal.
That's not bad, is it?
That's a very good deal. Yeah. And, imagine what you can do to a team structure to be ready for having a winning bike with that amount of money. You can essentially create a factory team the way that, say, Trackhouse are doing, create that factory environment within the Pramac squad with a lot of money to do it. And then whenever the Yamaha gets better, you're in a position where hot young talent wants to go to your team and win races there. I see it as a really sensible investment, because we all know that Yamaha are going to come back to being quick again in MotoGP. It's essentially inevitable that they're not going to come back and be Ducati levels of current domination, but they're going to come back and be fast again. So it makes sense to me that Pramac should seriously be considering this.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is absolutely, like, there is a real decision to be made there. I am less in the Yamaha camp of it, in the sense that if I was there, Paolo Campinotti or whoever in that structure, I would be leaning, my heart would be screaming to stay on the Desmosedici and hope that we'll still at least have a shot at winning races next year. And for me, that entirely depends on what riders Ducati can supply to me. What can they make happen? What wheels can they grease? Because, all the really, like, the guys who you're 100% certain about are, they're off the table. Marc Marquez didn't want to come there. Jorge Martin didn't want to stay there. As a satellite team, you are going to have factory team leftovers. You are always a bit limited. Pramac was in an absurd position of luxury with Jorge Martin, where basically in 99% of the cases that rider's off to the factory team like a year later. Like Pedro Acosta at Tech3. Maybe Fermin Aldeguer develops into something super special under your wing. There's a lot to like there as prospects. But you need an anchor rider right now that's, I don't know whether they have it on the market or not.
Yeah, and it's not, I get the parallel with Pedro Acosta and Tech3, but it's not like when Pedro Acosta goes, Hervé Pontrel has an alternative, particularly carrying on with Tech3 and being part of that structure. Well, I'm sure he would have had alternatives when Yamaha was fishing around, but Pramac has got a very obvious, here's a big bag of cash and a new relationship. Here's what it can do for your long-term future alternative. So I don't see, if Pramac's definitely staying with Ducati, if no one else is chasing Pramac, then obviously Pramac takes Bezzecchi or whoever and is quite happy with that and carries on winning a few races and maybe even being in rough title contention. Probably not with who else has gone to other places, but potentially. But Pramac's in a different position now. It's got a lot of different things to think about. Now Yamaha's coming along going, actually, this is what your long-term could look like. And something that's not, I wouldn't say puzzled me, because Pramac and Ducati have had a relationship that's worked very well. But Pramac was in that position because it got there first. You've got the Valentino Rossi brand looming over your shoulder. You've got a team with Grassini's heritage that has managed to sign Marquez. There's some real powerhouse Ducati satellites. If Ducati and Pramac stayed together, is it guaranteed that Pramac remains the number 2 team in the pecking order, given who else is there? Or is that something that they might have some nerves about?
Yeah, I don't think it's a certainty. And they've got to be aware of that other teams want their role. And, I've talked about this or hinted at this before in the podcast, that Pramac is not as well organized and run as many other teams in MotoGP. It looks to be a lot of the time a little bit chaotic from how some of the things that we see inside the team happen. Obviously our main point of contact is a media and comms point perspective, but like all you have to do is go and look at their social media to see how inconsistent it can be to get a sense of what I'm talking about. They're not on the same level as, say, a Tech3 or a Trackhouse that have, dedicated content producers. I mean, a quick look, just to make my point, I've just jumped onto Twitter on the Pramac page. We're recording this on the 12th of June. They retweeted MotoGP on the 7th. They retweeted MotoGP on the 2nd. And the last actual post made by the Pramac team was the 30th of April. In a world where social media is a huge part of your branding, that's not really what a factory team wants. Whenever you go and look at, say, Trackhouse that are, have a dedicated MotoGP video content maker in the paddock and are producing amazing stuff all year to help grow the audience and bring in new fans, the Pramac thing is a bit left behind. And that maybe is a little bit of a concern for them as well, or should be at least.
So assuming Pramac does go and Ducati's down to 6 bikes and the others are Gresini and VR46, the big question, I think the one that interests people even more than what happens with Pramac and Yamaha, is who does Ducati have on those 4 bikes, and who do you assume gets the top spec bike if Pramac's not there to have it?
That's a good question, because I would have just assumed 1 to VR46, 1 to Gresini to keep both sides happy, but I have seen,
agreed,
in Spanish media, I think, suggestion that it's just both would go to VR46, which I think would be quite harsh on Gresini, but if there's something contractual there, then who knows?
I doubt there's something there contractually pre-existing anyway.
Okay.
From what I understand about how those work. It's worth remembering that VR46 is kind of the most independent of all the factory Ducati teams, of all the satellite Ducati teams, sorry.
Yeah.
I don't think they'd be the one that have a contract that says, oh, by the way, you're suddenly an integral part of the factory right now, considering how distanced they've made themselves, I think quite purposely over the years. So I don't buy into that. For me, one bike to each team makes more sense. Give 1 to VR46, and it's a way to try and keep Marco Bezzecchi out of Aprilia's clutches. Or if not, Franco Morbidelli gets it because he's just starting to deliver good performances on the GP24 at Pramac anyway, so that makes a ton of sense. And then at Gresini, I don't know who gets what there. That's a trickier one because it depends on, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, because Alex Marquez stays, he gets a factory bike because he's a race winner, and Fermin Aldeguer joins as the second rider.
Yeah, it's also a question of what Aldeguer's contract says. Because remember...
Yeah, but from what we understand, it says that he doesn't get a factory bike in year 1.
Okay, so it is the Pecco Bagnaia model from... I don't remember if Jorge Martin was on a similar, but Pecco Bagnaia was definitely on that. I think Jorge Martin was straight to a works bike.
I think he was, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
But it depends on what the contract says and what they can convince Fermin Aldeguer and his representation as being the better option. Because ultimately, for a rookie starting on a year-old bike is pretty good. I don't really see any reason why he shouldn't be. I don't really see much reason why he should massively push for a work spec, apart from then having to make a 2-year jump in spec, which isn't always great. I think a lot of riders don't particularly enjoy that when it happens. But it could be fine for him to have something super refined, super ready. I do wonder if, given the interest that VR46, seemingly independently of Ducati, even had in Fermin last year, whether you'd give him to them and then just let Gresini go for who they want to go and just sort of accept losing Marco Bezzecchi to Aprilia, I guess. So VR46 would go Morbidelli, Aldeguer. Gresini would go Alex Marquez, and, we'll come to it, but there's options,
I think Ducati will be wary slightly to put too much betting behind VR46.
In terms of them sticking around?
Yeah, my gut feeling is that they're the one that will be exploring other options.
Because of a potential new manufacturer that isn't on the grid right now.
But I mean, that is one thing that would make a lot of sense. Valentino Rossi races a BMW. BMW are going to want a satellite team when they come in. There's one option that makes sense. But also, they've been the team that's been perhaps the most flighty in the past.
Yep.
We know they almost signed a Suzuki deal until Suzuki pulled out. We know that they've been flirting with Yamaha and that Rossi is still a Yamaha team ambassador. They're not there's a reason for their independence from the Ducati structure on both sides, not just the VR46 side.
Yeah, that makes sense. On the Aldeguer point, and we should visit Fermin Aldeguer corner, Fermin Aldeguer advocacy corner with Val, I would say. Because some of us listeners, are often on a Sunday morning at 11 a.m. UK time at the bike track with their kids. The kids are riding their bikes, just looking at our Slack channel, just seeing what Val's saying about Aldeguer in the Moto2 race, and just judging their MotoGP rising stars by how Val and Simon argue in our work chat. And Aldiger, obviously, when he was in the VR46 mix, there was a very special set of circumstances where Marc Marquez had just driven a bulldozer through the MotoGP rider market after most contracts had been signed, and Fernand Aldiger was suddenly looking absolutely sensational in Moto2. Now, I do catch up on the races a little bit later, but from my Slack browsing while the bike track with my kids, I've definitely seen a narrative around Aldiger of things have gone a little bit off the rails recently. But this is injury-based? Is that
No, it's not fully injury-based. It is partly injury-based. I have to say, now I am actually Fernand Aldiger fan because he had a pinched neck that ruined his weekend, and I'm the expert on pinched necks. I'm the king of that. Feel it every time, all the time. No, but Aldiger is not the sort of basically the god of thunder that he was last year at the end of the Moto2 season, nor is he bad. The situation with Aldiger that has transpired is that the very special bike that he's been riding, the Boscoscuro at its factory team Speed Up, the project of Luca Boscoscuro, now has 2 extra riders who are kind of not quite monopolizing the Moto2 title fight right now, but are stealing a march on their factory counterparts a little bit. So the 2 riders in the other team, Sergio Garcia, who is leading the championship right now, I believe, and Ayogura, have sort of in some ways outshone the pairing of Aldiger and Alonso Lopez. And there's a few ways to read that. And one way is, of course, that Aldiger's form was being flattered by the fact that the Boscoscuro improved as much as it did, which I think would be weird not to see it that way, at the very least. That is a likely sort of scenario. But for me, it is also important to acknowledge that all the Boscoscuro riders who Aldiger is currently comparing himself to are very good. Sergio Garcia is very good. Ayogura is very good. And I think Alonso Lopez is very good too. I think any of those guys can be in MotoGP very comfortably. And Fernand Aldiger will be. And he is... It's hard to say which of them has been like the best or the worst or whatever, the quickest, which to me matters more than really where they finish the races. And I think the quickest is probably Sergio Garcia or Fernand Aldiger. And that's fine. I think that still makes him okay. But the question is whether there will be any doubt creeping into Gigi Dall'Igna or the VR36 personnel who wanted him last year. And the way to fix that would be to just have a test and shove him onto Desmosedici and see what you do. But that doesn't happen. What we should remember is when a Gigi Dall'Igna protege made a next step and looked very shaky, looked very questionable, but Ducati never lost faith in him. Who was it? Who am I talking about? I'm talking about Pecco Bagnaia graduating to MotoGP, looking very dodgy in his first season, looking not dodgy, looking great in glimpses, but really poor in other glimpses in his second season, and then coming into the factory team and being awesome straight away and continuing to be awesome basically until now.
Yeah, I mean, the Bagnaia bet was very much when Ducati went for him and Jack Miller, there wasn't necessarily a certainty that Bagnaia was going to end up
Miller
on top.
Was the presumptive.
I would say it was probably
number one.
Miller, yeah, absolutely. It was 50-50 at best. The difference with this Aldiger situation is Aldiger is obviously a great young rider, but is he such a great young rider that Ducati should have committed itself to him a year in advance at a time when Ducati is now going to have 6 bikes rather than 8?
I think so.
And could take its pick of the grid.
I think so, yes.
Simon cut out at the wrong moment. We're trying to judge it through Simon's eyes to see whether
No, I think I know what he said. I could read his lips there.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think his star shone too brightly too early, and he's put himself in a fairly tricky position going forward in terms of how much they're going to love him. I've always been unconvinced, I think is fair to say, and that has not been unsupported by recent changes of events.
Another person who people, colleagues and people who follow MotoGP mentioned to be quite a lot at the moment is Frankie Morbidelli and where on earth he is going to fit in. And we have a few races lately where there have been signs of Morbidelli not looking like 2020 spec Morbidelli, but popping back into contention a bit more, finding his feet again a bit more. But what does it mean for his future particularly in a shrinking Ducati lineup?
And he still has Valentino Rossi's backing and unconditional love, which is the most important part of it, I would argue. I'm in two minds here because I think both myself and Simon very clearly saw that Morbidelli was going to be fine on the GP24 sooner than later once he made up the gap of experience and knowledge, having missed the entire preseason. He was never going to be anything good to start the season. I don't think it was ever reasonable to judge the speed and the results so much. The errors in wheel to wheel is different, but that's a whole entirely different discussion. I also think there is a concern about potentially overcorrecting here. Morbidelli is showing well, and he is genuinely a much better rider than people give him credit for. Like, Fabio Quartararo did not stomp him last year, for instance, at Yamaha. Last year, Morbidelli came out of his funk, and if he was that Morbidelli throughout his Works Yamaha tenure, I think they would have extended him probably without too much of a headache. He wasn't. His turnaround came too late to really mend the fact that the faith in him had been broken by the Yamaha higher-ups. And I think Alex Rins right now has been decent for Yamaha, but I think he has shown that actually Franco Morbidelli was doing fine, was not doing that bad at all.
Yeah.
All that said, he is still a distant fourth of the 4 GP24s.
Yeah.
There's 4 of them and he's fourth.
Yeah. No, that is absolutely the case. But I think Ducati will be aware of the context of the start of the season to him, and especially missing all that testing. I think it's quite telling that he started every weekend saying that he's essentially still learning the bike and he still needs time. But then he didn't say that at Mugello. He said that he started the weekend feeling fairly comfortable and fairly confident on the bike for the first time, and he was 4th and 6th in both races.
Yeah.
I think that to me is kind of the level I would expect Franco Morbidelli to be at, and was kind of where we expected him to be at early in the season. And he's picked a really, really, really fortuitous time to get back to that level. And I think that there's enough there now that he can turn it around and save himself a good spot.
But what if 4th and 6th is the ceiling? Would having a Ducati factory contract, so like a work spec bike at VR46, be justified by 4th and 6th at Mugello? For me, that
4th and 6th was effectively the level for Johan Zarco.
It was, yeah. But Zarco,
he was Mr. 5th place,
Yes, completely.
Yes. No, that's true. I can't really argue with that. I think Zarco's performance came out in different ways, but yes,
yeah. And it's worth noting that Ducati and Pramac didn't want rid of Zarco for this year.
Yes, but he was their second choice.
Morbidelli got that seat because Zarco decided to leave it.
Morbidelli got that seat in the way that someone catches... they're standing near a clown at a circus and someone's throwing the juggling balls around. The clown falls off the stage and you catch one ball in your hand in the audience. That is how Morbidelli got that seat in that mad summer.
What a phenomenally specific example.
Coming from you, Val, I say that was high praise.
That's true.
Absolutely.
No, that's true.
Lost my thread now, but yeah, he got that ride in very strange circumstances. But he has that Rossi safety net that he just. I agree. I feel like he just needs to show well enough for his continued time MotoGP not to seem ridiculous, and that'll be enough for VR46, particularly VR46 that might be losing Bezzecchi to somewhere else to go. Oh, yeah, you're part of the family. You come over here.
Yeah, no, I think it's already not ridiculous. Like, ridiculous would not come into it for me. And again, even last year. Like a comparison to Fabio Quartararo, who is still, I think, a consensus pick for a top 5 MotoGP rider right now at the very, 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 very worst, and probably higher than that. I think he's it's just a question of there will be riders on the MotoGP grid who should, even more so than look at Marc Marquez's example of transforming his fortunes by going to Gresini Ducati and, revigorating his career, giving it a second life. I think what they should look at more is Franco Morbidelli hung around, fell into a Pramac Ducati ride out of nowhere, basically, and is now going to very comfortably probably finish the season at the very least in the top 10, probably get himself on the podium, probably get, results that are unavailable to many of those riders right now, and certainly a phenomenal bike that is unavailable to those riders. So there's a lot of those guys who should go to Ducati's doorstep right now and be like, hey, I'll be your factory contract second rider, whatever. I'll ride this thing for whatever team you place me in. I can do more than he does. and try to remind them of, I don't know, some of his shakier times at Yamaha, or the fact that he's 29, for instance, whereas some of the other options are not 29. And obviously 29 is the oldest age known to man. You cannot be older than 29.
Yeah, no, I see all those points. Okay, we have to put you on the spot in that case. Val, you can be Uccio Salucci. Simon, you can be Nadia Padovani. Who are you signing given the available options for... Val, you go first for VR46 next season, assuming Pramac is gone.
Well, how tied in am I with loyalty to Valentino Rossi program riders?
You're Uccio Salucci. You are the loyalty.
Yes, exactly.
You're the definition of loyalty.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to turn into Uccio Salucci. It is difficult to become a different person.
Well, you're right. It's two very different questions, isn't it? Because one question is who would you pick for a satellite Ducati ride with at least one factory spec bike, and the other question is who do you pick if you are part of the VR46 setup and you're looking at the VR46 pool, because that is still, apart from the slight aberration of Fabio Di Antonio, which is turning out pretty well.
It is.
That is still what this team picks from. So let's go proper Uccio, Val. Do it in the absolute style of Uccio Salucci.
Yeah, Franco Morbidelli and Fermin Aldeguer.
I mean, you were going to pick Fermin Aldeguer anyway, just by being Val, weren't you?
Yes.
Simon, you are Nadia Padovani. Who are you picking for Gresini?
Marc Marquez and Fermin Aldeguer. And I have more chance of getting him than
gone.
Val does. No, Val's. I've got more chance of getting him because I'm actually a factory back team, and VR46 are the independents.
But did you mean Alex Marquez rather than Mark?
Alex Marquez, I meant Alex.
Yes.
That broke me for a second there. I was
They're getting him back.
I mean, I'd still try it. Screw it. What have they got to lose? But I think Alex Marquez has been, he's had a difficult start to the season, as everyone has on the older bike. But last year he was winning races for them. I don't really see another sort of semi-guaranteed race winner to slot into that team right now. So, yeah, unless Val does dig his teeth in and keep Fermin, in which case I'll happily take DJ back.
Yeah.
That's true. And that would be a very, I think, good option. And if I was basing it purely performance VR46, I think I would give Fabio Di Antonio the nod over Franco Morbidelli right now.
Yeah. A lot of people are not going to be looking at satellite Ducatis right now because they're looking at their longer term career options. They're seeing how full Ducati factory team could be for a while with Marc Marquez and Pecco Bagnaia. So satellite Ducati teams end up in a weird position of having a very competitive bike, but not necessarily being lots of riders' first choice. So you're right. Yeah, Alex Marquez. I wouldn't say I don't rate Alex Marquez, but I don't normally. You make a list of MotoGP riders. Alex Marquez isn't hugely high up here in terms of signing someone.
Yeah,
but you're right. He's one of the best options likely to be available to Gresini.
Yeah, I think if there is a situation to where they're hunting on the market, their best option will be to look for a rider who just wants to feel something again, right? Who just wants MotoGP to be fun again, the way it was for Marc Marquez. And I am obviously talking about Joan Mir here, 100%. A rider with world champion pedigree, with a ceiling that we know to be very high. A rider who could just be a very interesting experiment on a Ducati, and a rider who I think would rather ride a Moto3 bike right now than a Honda MotoGP bike, and maybe a Moto3 bike on the MotoGP grid. Look, somehow Joan Mir might still stay with Honda, right? That's possible, I think. But if he does, I will have to reevaluate a lot of my priors about what I think a rider is trying to say when they're publicly talking, because I don't see any other interpretation of what Joan Mir's been saying other than I'll sign the first offer, get me out of here, like
save me.
Yes.
Yeah. Joan Mir corner was going to be a little bit later in the episode, but you've yanked him into contention, and you're absolutely right to, because that is someone, if you're a satellite Ducati team, that is someone you should be ringing up going, look, our bike's not rubbish. You are unlikely to break yourself as many times on this bike. You could stay upright on it for a little bit longer. Come on. But what is your read on Mir, Simon? Is, despite all the clear unhappiness and the awful results and the crash after crash after crash after crash, is he likely to stay at Honda?
No. He basically retired in Mugello with a few very choice words, where he essentially told them where to stick their bike, and admitted that every single rider who has left Honda in recent times has left it in a much worse position than they joined it, including him and Marc Marquez.
Yes.
Which is a fairly fundamental sign that he's not going to be there next year. But I think there's loads of rumours suggesting he's going to retire. I think they're frankly ludicrous. They don't align with what he said publicly or what we've heard from inside his camp, who are quite adamant that he's staying. I think he just, as Val alluded to, he just needs to find his love of racing a MotoGP bike again. And he's super, super talented. He's actually one of these weird guys who I think his talent is more than his title shows.
His was such a weird title.
Yeah. But he's better than that weird title. He deserved a better run at a championship because he's better than that. And I think he needs to find a team where he can be happy to do that. I mean, for me, the obvious answer is that he finds his way to Trackhouse Aprilia with his championship winning team boss, Davide Brivio. I think he'd suit the Trackhouse environment. I think he'd suit the Trackhouse, kind of what they do in terms of content generation. And, there's a bit of a similar vibe to him, actually, to their NASCAR driver, Daniel Suarez. I see a little bit of similarity in personality and intelligence and, kind of getting how the system works there that I think he'd do well at. And I think he'd be really, really fast on an Aprilia. He'd bring good development kudos to the factory, to Trackhouse to boost their chances. It makes a load of sense. More than anyone else that's on the market for me.
I think it does make a ton of sense for Trackhouse and, a Davide Brivio reunion, and I think Trackhouse should aggressively pursue it. I do think if Gresini also makes an offer, you go there over Trackhouse. For me, I would strongly prefer that. Although I guess, as Matt rightly pointed out, the route to a factory future at Ducati is much, much cloudier.
But I don't know if Mir cares about that at this point, given where he is.
I think he just needs to feel something again. Yeah. Genuinely, I think he just needs to feel himself a MotoGP rider again. And as Simon mentioned, he has that championship that is, in a way, almost like a millstone for his legacy. It's maybe I'm too online poisoned, but I like Joan Mir a whole lot and think he's super talented, and I think he's had a better MotoGP season the following year after his title.
100%.
Even though he didn't win any races. Yeah. But I also think that right now he is tracking to be a pick very high up on future online listicle articles of least impressive MotoGP champions.
Yeah. Through no fault of his own, the circumstances of that season are basically he was at that circus where that clown fell over and Frankie Morbidelli caught the Pramac Ducati ride and Joan Mir caught the 2020 world title. It just fell on him. He was being consistent and not unimpressively consistent, but fine.
It was his second year.
It was great. On the Suzuki still. It was an impressive championship, but there were too many caveats, too many question marks, shortened season, weird season, COVID. Nothing was normal.
In American sports, they call the COVID year titles like Mickey Mouse rings derisively. Because for them, it's because it's like it's in lockdown or there's no fans. I hate it. It's insanely harsh. And I do not want that for Joan. He does not deserve it. His championship is as legit as any other championship. But he does not want to be remembered as the guy who came into MotoGP and won the championship and then flamed out. And I hope for him he doesn't, and I think there are routes in MotoGP right now for him to avoid that. For me, the question is whether there's any chance Frankie Garcetti is staying at Gresini. Why do I keep calling it Gresini, man? I don't know. What's up with my pronunciation?
It sounds sexier.
I don't see any chance of that happening.
No, this is when we're looking at Gresini earlier on. I was going to ask Simon, what is your take on how much of Gresini might be following Marc Marquez to factory Ducati?
Yeah, I think it's just one person, but I think it is Frankie. I don't see a world in which Marquez doesn't have that written into his contract that he goes with him.
Well, is Santi Hernandez at all a free agent? Like, do we know what the...
I don't think it matters.
Okay.
I think Marquez has moved on and has realised that Frankie Garcetti can help him win in a Ducati. I think it's only a matter of time until they do start winning together in a Ducati. Frankie has a lot more history with the bike than Santi Hernandez does.
100%. Yeah.
They've built a very, very close relationship very quickly. And Frankie's a Ducati employee, so it's easy to make that all happen internally. I think he is anyway.
And once that's settled, Frankie, come back on the podcast.
Yeah, well, that's the good thing is if he's not a Ducati employee, I'm going to get a text message to inform me of that shortly after this airs.
So a very deliberate mention, actually, of Frankie Carcetti's podcast appearance there, because that is the sort of thing we're going to be doing a little bit more of on something new that we are launching. MotoGP coverage is coming to the Race Members Club, just as the Race Members Club launches on Patreon. So it's a new way to get the extra bonus content that we produce. You better get through the Patreon website or app. And we're doing a special riders tier for people who just want MotoGP and two-wheeled motorsport content. It's £3 plus VAT per month, so less than the price of all pints actually, and quite a lot of coffees as well per month. And you get a couple of extra bonus podcasts each month. You will also get the chance to ask questions that we'll answer in an extra section after each post-race podcast. And if you've seen the stuff we do for F1 and the Members Club already, you'll know that actually we normally get so many questions they spin off into whole bonus episodes of the podcast just for the Members Club. So I think there's a fairly high chance we'll be doing that as well. So basically, it's more of the sort of thing we do on this podcast, but just for the members on Patreon in the riders tier. And the nice thing about it as well is you get a chance to shape what we do as well. We'll be taking your requests for who we should interview, what we should be debating, what bizarre rabbit holes we should be going down. It's live on Patreon now by the time you hear this, and we've got our first MotoGP extra bonus episode up there already, where we have a massive debate about the Isle of Man TT, coming from a position where Simon grew up with road racing and loves it. Val is very much not convinced. We go down every route from a lengthy philosophy quote to teams sponsored by grocery shops. It was a lot of fun to do. So when we tried to have a meeting a few weeks ago about ideas for MotoGP Members Club content, and we just had a massive 2-minute brainstorm. I was like, right, no meeting needed. We've got enough to fill a couple of years here pretty easily. So Simon, Val, are you looking forward to doing a few extras for the members on Patreon as well?
I want nothing more. Nothing would make me happier, genuinely.
His face is so sincere as well.
I genuinely do. I don't know whether or not Val's being sarcastic, but I'm just going to take him at his face value and say he's not.
Never.
I'm not. No.
There's a lot of stuff that we've wanted to do and never been able to fit into a rather demanding podcast schedule that I want to use this to do with. There's lots of people I want to talk to and drag on as guests that a slightly shorter format suits. And that we can be really entertaining with. Genuinely looking forward to it.
We love this sport and we love talking about it, and we love talking about minutiae that we can't necessarily spare time for on a regular podcast episode, and we sometimes can't spare the manpower for. And so giving ourselves a sort of reason that makes sense financially within the company to explore further those MotoGP areas that are important to us, and if it's too much MotoGP for you, that's totally fine. That's completely understandable. But there will be some of you for whom it is not too much, who are certified sickos like us. And I feel there is a symbiosis there. So I was not being sarcastic, genuinely even for a second, which is a first in my life, because usually you can assume.
I mean, the conversation initially went, Val, we're going to launch an extra bit of MotoGP Members Club on Patreon. You can bang on about Fernandez some more. And you were just sold, weren't you? You were just like, I'm there. Yeah, hands up straight away. If you're already part of the Race Members Club, it is also continuing in its current form on the website. No change there, but you'll be getting MotoGP content as well. If you do sign up for the Riders section on Patreon and you really do just want the two-wheeled stuff, you can select your settings to only see the stuff from the Riders channel. Otherwise, you will get previews of everything else we do in the Members Club on Patreon as well, which might tempt you to get some four-wheeled stuff too. But we know there's a bit of a split between people who are fans of all motorsport and listen to us, people who are fans of F1 but are a little bit MotoGP curious, and people who are just bike racing fans and do not want any of that four-wheeled pointy nose nonsense getting anywhere near their ears. So you can be one of those on Patreon as well. The main members club is going to Patreon too. There'll be a new champions tier with even more stuff on top as well. So it's well worth checking out. Please come and join us over there, and we'll be getting in touch with you when you join us over there there with plenty of opportunities to shape what we get up to, who we interview, where we take those interviews. I've been involved in quite a few parts of the Members Club output on the F1 side, and what started out as just a few extra podcasts and some extra chances to ask questions has now got us doing a full series where we relive the entire 1997 Formula One season and argue about it. And that's the kind of niche rabbit hole, nostalgic fun times I can see us getting into in MotoGP land in the coming years on the Members Club on Patreon too. Back to the present, we're in the situation where the person in Moto2 guaranteed a MotoGP seat next year is 6th in the championship with 5 people above him, Fernandez, obviously. Who else might we see factor in the MotoGP rider market? Is Joe Roberts a realistic contender for a MotoGP ride next year? I'm sure a massive chunk of Dorna would like that to be the case.
I don't think he is, as much as a massive chunk of our listenership would also like that to be the case.
Yeah.
This is going to be really harsh to say given what he's done recently, but I don't think he's good enough. I think he's delivering right now in Moto2, but it's taken him 120 races to do so. And that's not the mark of a future MotoGP world champion. Trackhouse have said that they want to promote American talent based on talent, not based on passport. And that they're more than happy to spend time and money nurturing talent down the ranks to make that happen. At Mugello, I've gotten to know the new American kid, the new rookie in Red Bull Rookies this year, Christian Daniel Jr. I've got to know Christian a little bit over the first half of the season, and I promised him that I'd take him and introduce him to Justin Marks from Trackhouse at the first opportunity we had, the first race that was both a rookies round and that Justin had come to, and that was Mugello, and managed to make the introduction happen. And basically Justin took like 30 minutes out of his day in the middle of a very crowded schedule, to the exasperation of a press officer trying to hustle him on to the next thing, to stand in the middle of hospitality and learn everything about Christian. And I think that is kind of indicative of their strategy.
Yeah.
They're watching these kids coming up through, and they want to bring someone in who's going to be who has earned their place to be there. And Christian's already delivering top 8 performances in his first season as a Red Bull rookie, so there's potential there. And they're going to be looking out for people like that, rather than just promoting Joe Roberts based on essentially 4 races at the start of a new season where tires have been very different and things have been a bit upside down compared to the past, because they don't want to do, Val's going to hate this, what Ducati have done with Hermin Alliger.
Oh, wow.
He was signed off the back of 4 races.
Well, he was almost signed 2 years ago when he was a 17-year-old off the back of 2 races, which that would have been ridiculous. It's not like he just started doing anything at that point. I think that those 2 guys still do have a very different sort of record to them. And so I wouldn't be irritated if Joe Roberts found a way onto the MotoGP grid next year, because ultimately it's, he is succeeding in Moto2. If he keeps this level, if he stays in the championship hunt, then fair enough. That's that is what Moto2 is for. But I do think MotoGP teams will be keenly aware, and Trackhouse among them, that spending 7 years in Moto2, I think, and to finally make it there is it's not conducive to long-term MotoGP success. I can't think of recent cases or cases ever since the Moto2. They're just aren't. Yeah, I mean, riders with that level of Moto2 experience that came in, or anywhere near that level, who do we have? Tom Luthi, Xavier Simeon, I think. I mean, Taka Nakagami, Alex Marquez, Augusto Fernandez, some other guys. There's a list. Luca Marini may be the biggest success story of them all so far, but you're not likely to unearth your next champion that way. And yeah, I mean, this is Joe Roberts' first season of being a proper front runner, and it is season 7. But at the same time, if he continues in that way, and if there is a belief at Trackhouse and at Aprilia somehow that there's a reason to think it's just, it's late growth, or it's just environment based, or they can coax out the best of him, then of course the problem is hearing Trackhouse speak through Davide Brivio and hearing Aprilia speak through Massimo Rivola, they don't sound to be trending that way. I don't think they're into this idea.
The other one who has a strong chance of getting out of Moto2 to MotoGP next year, surely at last, has to be Ayagura. Is that finally going to happen, or does he not fancy this Honda still? Because if he doesn't, fair play.
I think it's going to get to the point where he's just told what to do. It's looking more likely than ever that it's going to be the case.
And is there any obvious route for current Moto2 Championship leader Sergio Garcia, who's doing it in his second year? Is there an obvious route for him onto the MotoGP grid? Because to me, there doesn't seem to be one, unless that's a route Pramac I want to go down with Yamaha.
Well, yeah, Pramac Yamaha would make a lot of sense, but I think also like the leftover opportunity, because I think he's legit.
Yeah,
and I think at a certain, like, MotoGP teams, maybe there isn't a route, but it really does not take a lot for a MotoGP team to fall in love with an idea of signing somebody.
Like Fermin Aldiger.
Absolutely. Like Fabio Quartararo after winning one Moto2 race after not really showing that much on Moto2 machinery before. You know, it's a game of timing. And I think if things are being hashed out right now, like Sergio Garcia just needs a few more rounds of this. And I promise you, he's at the forefront of everybody's mind. Like, this is not a Lorenzo Baldassarri type thing. This is not a Tony Arbolino type thing. It is his second season, isn't he?
Yeah.
This is a lot for a second season already. Like, I think this is legit. You believe this. I believe this anyway, in any case. And I think his Boscoscuro fellow riders are also very talented. So I think life will find a way, to borrow a quote from some movie. I would just like to point out, I was roll calling riders with a lot of Moto2 experience. The one who's made it the most is Johan Zarco. I did not name him. I apologize for that, Johan. It's obviously you. Well done. But you also did win 2 titles there.
Yeah,
so,
indeed. A little bit different. And look, I would say Zarco looked very good in Moto2 with the teams he was with before that as well. There was clear momentum rather than like a sort of gradual drift. And, that guy's suddenly good. But where's it going to go?
Yeah, most of those guys are not a good direct comparison with Joe Roberts, no.
So I think we have covered off most of the next possibilities of what is going to happen in this rider market, which I don't think is going to settle down for a little while yet. Based on what's happened, well, basically every year since Vinales over-revved that engine, there could be surprises to come as Val. Val has shot his hand up like he's just thought of some massive piece in the jigsaw we've missed.
One sentence challenge for you two, because
go on.
I've noticed a bit of clamor on social media and a bit of like maybe a feeling that one rider's performances are going unnoticed, and he came up already this episode, but I think we haven't like zeroed in on him specifically. If you had the power to pick Fabio Di Gianantonio's seat next year, what would you pick? Where would you place him?
Oh, that's an interesting one.
Pramac Yamaha.
I think it depends who gets the other 2025 Ducatis for me. I think what he's doing is showing that he's a good, safe bet for that role in a year when that role is not going to be a title contender, because Ducati's taking care of that in-house now. It's not expecting, it never expected Martin to be that either, but there's no expectation of someone filling that Martin role on that bike, and Digi's doing a lovely job.
Works spec bike at one of the 2 teams.
Yeah. But I like that Pramac Yamaha shout. That's an interesting one, Simon.
Seeing as all the rules have gone out the window and we're just doing whatever we want, I am now going to throw this back to you two with a one-sentence answer as well.
Yeah, sure.
To satiate MotoGP's most passionate fan base, because I'm going to get asked about this on social media immediately after the podcast is posted. If we don't address it, where's Miguel Oliveira going?
That was a one noise challenge.
Wow.
No, it's a little bit harsh. I'll let Val go first.
Oh no. Oh boy, I regret my words and deeds now by kicking this whole thing into motion, because I have.
This is not going to be a popular segment.
Well, Val's making anguish noises. I would happily keep him at Trackhouse Aprilia. I think if you're bringing someone else in there as well, potentially Joan Mir, I think Oliveira's had some nice peaks and is a good rider. I think MotoGP knows enough about him now that he's not going to be a champion. Gosh, this isn't a one-sentence challenge. I've gone on a massive rant. Basically, I'd probably keep him over Raul Fernandez, but I suspect Trackhouse wouldn't have that opinion because they've got a lot of long-term faith in Fernandez?
I'd say Pramac Yamaha.
That's everyone's answer to everything.
But yeah, I don't think, because the thing with Miguel is I do not want him off the MotoGP grid. I think he's plenty good enough to stick around. I think he's been dealt a bad hand in his Aprilia adaptation by, you know, having a season that should have been really good just basically snatched away from him repeatedly by injury. And I feel really crappy about that. And also his certain cerebral attitude to everything, both when he's, you know, in a playful mood and when he's in quite a surly mood, I think brings a lot. I think, you know, if Miguel Oliveira was in a title fight, there would be, outside of the Portuguese ranks, there'd be a lot more exposure to what a fascinating character he is.
That's fair.
But I think, yeah, Pramac Yamaha. Because at Trackhouse, I would keep Raul Fernandez.
So as we've all swapped roles now, Simon is off to moonlight on F1 for a little while. Val is off to set all the deadlines and do all the rotors. And I've got to tell my wife and kids we're moving into a van for the rest of the year to travel Europe, which is going to be a bit of a problem for school and preschool, but we'll figure it out. Thank you for your company on this podcast, listeners. Please check out what we're doing with the Race MotoGP Members Club on Patreon. And we'll be back in your ears here and there very soon.
The Athletic.